The pit stop is vital to every race team's success. Pull off the track, let your team go to work. Change all 4 tires, fill the fuel cell, and make needed adjustments, all in 8 seconds or less.
Hey, good afternoon, good morning, good evening, wherever you're watching or listening to the show from. This is The Pits Are Open, brought to you by Speed Sport and Redline Ace. I'm your host, Will Marotti, our master engineer, producer, Alex Smith at the helm. And you guys, I got to tell you, I had a great weekend. Great weekend in Indianapolis, my second home. And it ended, when we finished the show on Wednesday, there was a lot of controversy about the Penske cars and what was going on, and then they not only were they been knocked out of the Fast 12, they were put to the back of the qualifying. There was all kinds of rumors that were thrown around, and it was fast and furious. And then we finally got to Carb Day, and it was interesting. But the race was, holy cow. It was one of the most interesting races I've ever been to for the 500. And not that I'm complaining. I enjoyed it. As a fan, I enjoyed it because there was a lot of crazy things. But there's some, really strange things happened during this 500 that you don't normally get to see. And we're going to talk more about that with our guest, Tony Donahue, is coming on the Tony D podcast, and then we have Kevin Kraus coming on from 7th Gear Over Rev, also coming on at the 4:30 hour. So I gotta tell you what though, it's hard to come off of that high. I can't imagine what it's like living in Indiana, particularly Speedway, where the buildup is just so tremendous, and I mean it really is like Christmas time over there. People decorate their houses. They're in full Indy 500 regalia. I mean, just everything is Indy 500. And then there's this massive, throng of people, record, lifted the blackout, sold out. We're going to call it 350. I don't know. They never give you the exact number. I mean, just unbelievable. And then it's over. And you're stuck in traffic. And you're leaving, and it's over, and it's like, wow, what an emotional drop off. And that's for me. I mean, I'm just a person. Imagine what the drivers feel like and the teams feel like. Just incredible. All right, no, not yet, huh? Okay, we are experiencing a little technical difficulty here today, but we're gonna try. We're going to try to work that through. It's interesting. Okay, Tony says he's on the new link, so we'll see if this is working. And checking. No, huh? Okay, Alex is going to work on that. We got Tony Donahue is hanging out in the waiting room, the green room, trying to get on. And we are anticipating, just something going on. I don't know what it is. I'm not sure what it is. We kind of anticipated it, and we tried to avoid it, but we just we didn't get to it quick enough. So we're gonna give Alex a moment or two. It was a crazy event. But I'll tell you something. If you've never been, I don't even care if you're not a racing fan. If you've never been to the Indianapolis 500, you really need to go. There's nothing like it. 350,000 people. Let me send you that, Alex. Here, that was a good idea. 350,000 people. It is a absolute. It's insane. It's insane. If you've never experienced that before, I'll tell you one of the things that drives me. Well, it just drives me to keep coming back again and again and again. Is the fact that you've got this large. I mean, just unless you express, I say you got to go. If you haven't experienced it, it's almost impossible to explain it because it's unlike anything you've ever experienced in your life. It's just I just texted you that. It's unlike anything you've ever expected in your whole life. It's just there's so many people, but here's the thing that's amazing about it. Now, again, from Connecticut, there's a big culture difference from living in Connecticut to living in or being in Indiana. Middle America. Very different. And the crazy thing is that when they, again, everywhere it's a sea of humanity. From where we were looking, we could look all the way down the pits into turn 1. We could look to turn 4 and what's called the short chutes, a short straightaway that connects 3 and 4, and it's just a sea of humanity. So it's just 300,000 plus people is gigantic, right? But when they ask for a moment of silence, get ready for a prayer, I mean, you can hear a pin drop. It's just amazing. It's national anthem. People get focused for a moment on national anthem. Just an amazing thing. And then the race is starting, and it's really an exciting thing. All right, we are continuing to work on our. What are we working on here? Santino Ferrucci. I was pulling for Santino. Wanted him so badly to be able to win one of these things, but Santino's developing quite a record at the Indy 500. It's a situation where he's competed in 7 500s. He's never finished out of the top 10. He's finished 3rd, 4th, 5th, 7th, 10th, I think, once. But he's finished all 7 races. It's an incredible run for Santino. And of the 7 races, of course, it's 500 miles. The track is 2.5 miles around, so it's 200 times around, 200 laps to complete 500 miles. Times 7, that means there's 1,400 laps of competition in those 7 500s he's participated in. He's completed all 1,400 laps. I mean, he's building an incredible resume. Now, if he never wins, that's no, huh? We're working on it. Okay. 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 I heard a sound too. But it's not coming up. Okay. Incredible driving record for Santino Ferrucci. And of course, a lot of heartbreak. Ryan Hunter-Reay, the 2014 winner of the 500, was in the lead, was doing great, was really, really putting on a great show. And car caught on fire right in front of us, right? Literally directly across from where we were sitting. We were outside the track in the beginning of the home stretch out of turn 4, and literally in front of us, Ryan Hunter-Reay's car sitting there on fire, and so that was crazy, and so that was very big disappointment. A lot of disappointment going on. Robert Schwartzman, the rookie pole sitter, gosh, how horrible was his day, and a lot of pit problems. A lot of people in the pits that were very. It just didn't go well for him, and including Alexander Rossi, who was having a pretty decent run, and on a pit stop, apparently fuel spilled out of the filler hose. Of course, the hose is this big, it's gigantic, and the car caught on fire, and so his day was out. But it was just a very difficult, day for some folks, but I don't want to go to what I think is the most difficult part of it, because I want Tony to get in. But and we finally apparently beat the digital gremlins here, ladies and gentlemen. The much acclaimed, highly mentioned Tony Donahue. Tony, welcome.
Yeah, I guess we'll do it on my phone here.
Sorry, I don't know what's going on. We anticipated a problem, which is why we asked you to come in early, and we were right, but couldn't fix it. Anyway, hey, thank you so much. I was just telling folks, I mean, it was a pretty interesting 500. I mean, I've been through a lot. You've been through a lot. I mean, just crazy. First, the temperature. The temperature was an issue, I think, for a lot of people because of Cubs tires, and we had some, and maybe the biggest tire gremlin of the day affected Scotty McLaughlin. I mean, I was heartbroken for McLaughlin. Could you believe when that happened? I mean, it was like hang your mouth open. How the heck did that happen? It was crazy, wasn't it?
Yeah, we were down in the pits before the race, and we were inside of turn one, ironically enough, right where he came to a halt, watching some of the Hall of Fame museum cars go around. Yeah. And I thought, this kind of feels like 1992, and with the rookie pole sitter, it was kind of like, all right, with the weather, we could see some chaos. I'm going to preface this by saying how much I like Scott McLaughlin, I like Joseph Newgarden, and I like Will Power. But we always talk about the Indianapolis Motor Speedway coming to life, and it's kind of its own beast, and it picks the winner. And I thought to myself, if it really does pick the winner, it's not going to pick a Penske car today. And, obviously Will Power and Joseph Newgarden being moved to the back were massive It was a massive punishment. It's so hard to win from back there just because there's so many things that could go wrong.
Sure.
Your pit boxes is in the middle of everybody else's.
Right.
Somebody's mistake, we saw it with Marco on lap one. Somebody's mistake. I like Scotty McLaughlin, but that's probably poetic justice for, heading in the qualifying weekend. It's why you run the 500 miles. You just don't know what's going to happen over the 200 laps.
Yeah. So I wasn't the only one of the 349,000 other people that were there that was saying to myself, this is like the curse of Penske. I mean, I was stunned when it happened. But apparently a lot of other folks must have thought that as well.
Yeah, and I mean, you think about just Scott McLaughlin coming in, and a lot of people thought, okay, he's got that oval win underneath his belt last year in Milwaukee. He's confident. He was on the pole last year, and everything was looking Scotty McLaughlin's way. Let's face it, I think the two best cars all month were Joseph Newgarden and Scott McLaughlin. And then you get into that morning session on Sundays as you're locked into the top 12, and you go off for that practice and lost it off of the second turn, got airborne, check cleared. They released him from the infield care center. Then they rebuilt that entire car and was just content with saying, hey, we're going to start 12th in the Indianapolis 500. And then he ended up moving up to the 10th spot after the 12 and the 2. Moved to the back of the field, and then to not even make it to the green flag. Really just started out a really wild first, let's just say, 25 to 30 laps of that race.
Yeah. Well, and I think, too, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think Newgarden had gotten all the way to 8th at one point from the back of the row, and then he had his problems. It's just one thing after another, and it was his day was done. So, I mean, I think Will finished, right, but not great, but it was,
and you look at Joseph. I mean, they had some awesome pit stops all day long, but again, your car just changes so much as you move your way up to the field, and how much of your car have you kind of used up late in the stretch and late in the race. And then obviously he had the issue that ultimately took him out of the race, ending his bid for 3 straight. And then we had some controversy. Obviously, there was some different strategies being played. And once everything kind of got to normalcy, I would say, with not a lot of yellow flags and kind of drivers just saving their time or saving their tires and biding their time, you ended up having Ryan Hunter-Reay on a fuel strategy run that I thought was going to win him the Indianapolis 500.
I did too.
He gets on the radio and says, hey, I'm out. You got to bring me in. And somebody else on the team was also on the radio, so they didn't hear Ryan. And they pitted him a lap too late, and the fuel pickup didn't quite get there. So then Alex Palou was in second behind Marcus Ericsson, and then Marcus Ericsson merges down the backstretch ahead of Alex Palou Ultimately, Palou got to the spot. There was some. There was a little bit of controversy with Devlin and Louis Foster, the Ray Hall, Letterman, Lanigan stable about where they should have been. What can IndyCar do in the future? Why can't the lead driver on every racetrack that we go to get past a back marker, so to speak? And obviously a lot has to do with the hybrid. But, yeah, I mean, there was a lot. And then obviously Monday, everything's kind of settled in. And we're looking at the victory photos. And then Marcus Ericsson moved to the back, Kyle Kirkwood moved to the back, and Cullum Ilott were moved to the back. And I just, the kind of chaos that would have ensued if Marcus Ericsson had won the Indianapolis 500, what would they have done? Would they have taken it away from him? Would they have stripped him of the victory at the Indianapolis 500 and sent Alex Palou on the tour? I mean, usually you don't strip a victory, and you could say that they wouldn't any other year, but this year and the year that they moved Penske to the back, and all we've heard of Doug Bowles talk about is the integrity of the sport and the integrity of the Indianapolis 500. That would have been interesting. Nonetheless, unfortunately, for Marcus Ericsson, who I like a great deal, should have had his second runner-up finish in the last 2 years, should have had his third top 2 finish in the last 4, and that gets taken away from him. I don't think I think they are appealing it. I don't think – And the same with Penske. My opinion on Penske was, look, it's not so much that it's a huge advantage on the racetrack. Everybody's stretching the rules. It's the fact that you were told not to touch the safety part, and it looks like Andretti is going to appeal. Was it the difference between Marcus Ericsson finishing second and let's say 8th? No. I don't think whatever it was going to give him that much of an advantage because, he had a really good car. In the first stint, and then it kind of fell from there when the tires went away. But ultimately, he falls back to the back of the field, and David Malukas scores the runner-up finish at Indy.
And what's hurtful too with Ericsson, because I like Marcus as well. His time at Andretti not really stellar, and what a great thing finish second. I mean, you want to win, right? But they talked. I read the press release. They talked about like unapproved parts or the washers in the suspension. I mean, it seems like we're really getting crazy about what we're calling in terms of infractions. And then there was also, maybe you know more about this, in the press release for Andretti, part of the penalty was because of unsportsmanlike conduct. And what was that all about?
I don't know if there was like an argument or anything after that. I would just imagine unsportsmanlike conduct is just trying to gain an advantage of some sort, whether it's smoothing over bolts or bondoing pieces and parts to try to help the airflow. I just think the doing something you're not supposed to be doing is the unsportsmanlike conduct penalty. It's not like he got physical with Rocket in post-race tech inspection. Or, threw a wrench across the garage and was upset. So I think we would have heard about that.
I extended an invitation to Rocket to come on the show, so I'm hoping we can get him on here in the next week or two. It's just the thing with that was so surprising to me was you've got Foster and you've got oh my gosh, I'm drawing
Devlin DeFrancesco.
Now, they were on the lead lap still, right?
Yeah, so they were on the tail end of the lead lap.
So that's the rule. The rules are if you're on the lead lap, you're under no compulsion to move over to let leaders get by you and lap you. Right?
Yeah, and we've seen this throughout the year. We saw it at Thermal. We saw it at Barber.
Right.
It's with this hybrid, it's hard to pass. It's hard to pass any car. And if the lead car can't get past the 22nd place car, what are we doing? There needs to be some changes, some adjustments. I mean, look, I think attrition and lap cars do become factors into a race, but when you're in a line like that, 3, 4, 5 deep, it's just like, it doesn't matter if you're the 24th place car or the leader, you guys are exactly the same and it's hard to pass. Ericsson went for the pass on Devlin with about 14 laps to go. Couldn't quite get it done. And then with 11 to go, obviously, or I think 13 to go, Palou ends up with the win. So, I mean, we could sit here all night and talk about it. There's issues with the hybrid. There's issues with the weight of these cars. But nothing's going to happen until the end of the season.
You probably did. I listened. I watched the replay already because I love the TV broadcast, but when you're there, you don't really get. I mean, you get to see it on the screen for whatever it is, but you still miss some on the TV. So I watched the TV broadcast, and I'm telling you, I don't think one time I don't think one time did I hear anybody talking about the state of the hybrid, recharging, deployed. I don't think I heard ever talked about it. So I'm like, I don't honestly, watching as much as I watched this, and you were there for the whole time, I don't think the hybrid was helping these guys at all. On the last lap, whether it was a full discharge or a slow discharge, I don't see there was a big speed increase when those things were going on. So I'm wondering, what's the value of the hybrid in the first place?
Yeah, I think a lot of the hybrid was used, for mistakes that you made or to capitalize on somebody else's mistake. I also think somebody like Alex Palou and Malukas, it was hard for them to use over that last fuel stint because it burns so much fuel,
right,
and it burns the tires off. And I think you kind of have to juggle. Okay, we haven't really had many yellows here late in any races. Do I save myself just in case there is a crash and I can have more tires and more fuel to burn on the restart? It just depends on how you went into it. For me, I understand why they brought in the hybrid, and you're trying to keep Honda. You're trying to attract a third manufacturer. I understand it, but it costs drivers races. We've seen the least competitive IndyCar series season so far to date that I can remember. And as much as we preach about how much we love the domination and the historical nature of what Alex Palou is doing right now, I think it's made the racing worse. And I do think that it's linked to why some of these teams are stretching the envelope and are doing things that they shouldn't do, is because they're trying to play catch up from being 100 pounds heavier on this hybrid.
But it's what I'm saying. What's the difference between 2 years ago and last year, Mid-Ohio, till today? Well, the only biggest difference is the hybrid. And I wonder, has it changed, even the center of gravity that much? I mean, we saw some vicious crashes this month, more than we normally would. I mean, and the car's getting up in the air. As soon as the car would hit, the car picks up, it's up in the air. So I don't know, moving forward, new car, will we get a new car? I don't know. Do you feel confident the hybrid will still be a part of that package?
I think it's something that they have to look into. Talk to Honda. Honda was the moving forward piece of this hybrid and bringing this in and then possibly attracting a third engine manufacturer. I think it'll stay. I mean, unless Roger's willing to hand out $100,000 refunds, or, hey, it looks like he's going to lease all these new cars out to these teams. So why not just take $100,000 off their bill and call it a day?
Yeah, I guess. I was watching another journalist, Marshall Pruitt, and Marshall's not afraid to mix it up. He's not worried he's going to lose access if he throws some high hard ones. And he said that Doug Bowles in a press conference talked about after the scandal, talked about they were working on an independent body, an independent authority for technical inspections that would be separate, and they wouldn't be Penske employees. Marshall said he uncovered that really was like a Honda directive. That Honda threw that in with, if you want us to stay beyond 26, you better get something else going on here. So you got Honda who wanted the hybrid, Honda who wants an independent. It's almost like Honda's running the show at this point. Chevrolet's not, making waves about anything, it seems.
Honda was very upset about the Penske situation, and this is a Honda manufacturer that has been pretty, well known that there's a chance that they could leave. There's been some interest of them going to NASCAR. Mm-hmm. Can you possibly bring in a third engine manufacturer so that Honda can focus on maybe one or two teams inside of the paddock as their quote unquote factory team?
Factory teams.
I think, I think Honda's number one goal in all of racing, in all of their motorsports entities, whether, it's F1 or, whatever else that they're in, it's to win the Indianapolis 500. They went 1-2 technically, ended up being just the win as Malukas and the Chevy moves up to second spot. But, I think Honda's going to end up ultimately staying, maybe with just two teams. We'll see what those two teams are. There's a lot of rumors going on engine manufacturer movement throughout the paddock that I think we'll see here over the next maybe couple of months, maybe even sooner. That way, this team's jumping over here, and this team's going to go to this manufacturer. I think we'll see that over the next couple of weeks or months. But, we'll see when this new car comes. It's supposedly going to be tested at the end of this year at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, and then we'll really know what it looks like as testing continues through 2026 in hopes of rolling it out in 2027.
Do you think finally, you talked a lot about this. We all believe this, that Indy comes alive. It makes its own choices. It's like this. There's a show on right now. It's called The Way Home, and it's about it's a time travel show. And there's a pond, and you jump into the pond, and the pond sends you back or head. And they pretty well come to understand the pond makes up its own mind of what it's going to do in terms of where it's sending you, right? Indy seems like it's doing the same thing. I wonder if, with all of the controversy and all of the concern about scandal and cheating, will it ever be Santino Ferrucci's time? We've got a guy who's competed in 7 500s, 7 top 10s, a third, a fourth, a fifth, a seventh. He's completed every single 1,400 laps of competition. Do you think the track will ever pick Santino?
I'm a huge fan of Santino. I have a really good relationship with him. I understand how talented that he is. I understand how good he is, especially on ovals.
Yeah.
He deserves to win the Indianapolis 500. He is good enough to do it. Is the equipment around him good enough to do it would be my question. And Will, to be honest with you, you go back to the 2017 500 when, Sato wins, but there was so much exchanging of passes and you had the aero kits. Like that's a race that Santino Ferrucci would have won.
Yeah.
If we can jack the boost up for the race, and we can make this where, you're maybe a sitting duck at the lead, and you got to make some bold, daring passes. That's the kind of 500 Ferrucci's going to win. I don't think that he has the car necessarily underneath him to move his way forward in an AJ Foyt car. And it's not a knock on Santino. And Foyt's come a long way. I mean, this is a team that 10 years ago wasn't in contention really for anything. Ferrucci puts him on pole last year. I think Malukas and Ferrucci, either both or one, will win on an oval this year, and it could be as soon as Gateway in 2 weeks. But Ferrucci's a great guy. He's talented. He's super aggressive, which you like to see in a race car driver. And it would be cool if it happens. But I think with the equipment that he's currently in, it really is going to have to fall his way. And going to have some breaks and some luck come his way as well, because he can do it talent-wise inside of the cockpit. But I'm just not sure everything around him is up to snuff to win the Indianapolis 500.
Hey, we're out of time, but I got to ask you one more question. It's not another one. So I read something with Alex Palou, and Alex said that he studied the race that he lost. I guess it would have been 2021.
Yeah.
And he said he noticed that when Elio was using slow back markers to gauge the pace of what was going on. He said he did that same thing with Marcus using the cars in front of him. Was that really, you think, a clear strategy that was studied and implemented?
I think a little bit, yeah, because, you could use those lap traffic cars to your advantage. And do you want to take the risk? Elio didn't really pass the lap traffic. Elio was content and kind of staying in line. Do you really want to risk your car? Do you want to make a move where you're expecting an aggressive Devlin DeFrancesco or a rookie driver and Louis Foster to give you the room, give you the space that you feel like that you deserve? I mean, look, you had two Hondas running up front. You had two Hondas that were, kind of running towards the back, even though they were in front of the two leaders. And it was like, okay, Honda's going well. It's hard to pass 3, 4, 5 cars deep. We're guaranteed to win right now. We're running first and second. Let's make sure these Rahal cars just kind of stay right where they are. And it's unfortunate because I think we would have saw a lot of swapping in the lead back and forth because having clean air, and being second in line, you got a chance to get on a hybrid and pass inside of a tow. But, look, I mean, we can say all these things and what if and who did this and who cheated that. At the end of the day, the guy that's on a historical tear in IndyCar won the Indianapolis 500. I don't think anything was going to take that away from him.
No, not at all. And if anything, I would say about that, I mean, if Palou used that as a strategy, I would give him a check mark for that and saying, okay, here's a kid that's learning as he comes up and took something that he caused him possibly to lose the race to win the race. Hey, Tony, thank you as always. Such a pleasure. Sorry we had technical difficulty up front. And I hope you're still recovering from the sugar high of the 500 coming off of that. So,
as somebody who worked in radio for 10 years, trust me, I know all about technical difficulties. Thanks for having me, and I guess we got to go to Detroit here in 48 hours.
Yeah. All right. Thanks again, Tony. Tony down here, everybody.
Take care.
All right. Good. Thank you so much. Good guest. All right, we're gonna take a quick got a promo for Speed Sport, and then I think Kevin's out there. Yeah, we'll bring Kevin up next. Okay, stay with us. We're right back.
Speed Sport 1 is your place for motorsports action, from 4 wheels to 2. In some cases, no wheels. On Thursday, we've got IMCA Racing from Williston Bay Speedway. It's the Band Day doubleheader at noon and at 8 p.m. Eastern. On Friday, get ready for the new season of F1 Powerboat Championship by looking back at last year's season. All day Sunday, it's off-road chaos with the National Rock Racing Association and this year's Mint 400 from Las Vegas. It's free to watch. Go to speedsport1.com for details and viewing options.
Welcome back, everybody. Here we are. Pits are open. That was a great time with Tony. We're sorry about the technical difficulty, but we expected, kind of thought it was coming. Alex kind of thought it was coming and said we better get him in for early test, and we just didn't have enough time to get it straightened out, but it all worked out. First-time guest. I'm excited about this guest. I first met him several years ago, an Indiana person, a professional driver. He is trained drivers. He's raced. Has a spectacular, critically acclaimed podcast, Seventh Gear Over Rev is the name of it. And he's also in the food industry, which is interesting to me. But we met the first time a few years ago in Indianapolis, and I'm so happy to welcome Kevin Kraus to the show. Kevin, welcome.
Will, it's great to see you again, my friend. Thanks for having me on the show, and congrats. This is a great platform.
Well,
I'm happy to be here with you today.
Well, you got a great platform, too. I'm trying to catch up, so we've got a lot of work to do to get where you're at. But
well, we can help each other out.
Yeah, but it was great. We got a chance to meet. We were in Turn 2 Suite, I think, when we met a few years ago.
Yes, sir. That's correct.
And so what did you think? I mean, was that a crazy 500 or what? I mean...
It was, and crazy, not probably in the most spectacular of fashions. Yeah. It was crazy in that it was like, you kind of came to the end of it going, well, that was a race. I was even saying to some of the folks that I was with my duties on race day, and I was like, especially with the rain delays and all those things that happened and all the cautions, especially for the first half of the race, it almost felt like the 24 hours of Indianapolis.
Well, I mean, it certainly did last year with the 12-hour rain delay. I mean, we never left the suite. We were upstairs the whole time and never got out. But you had a pretty good vantage point. You were hanging out with the McLaren folks, right?
I did. I was fortunate enough to be asked back by the folks at McLaren to host for their invited guests up in their suites at the very end of pit lane. They're coming off of turn 4.
Monstrous facility they have.
Yeah. It was a monstrous facility, and it was actually, I mean, certainly we had to, kind of not necessarily tap dance, so to speak, but, we were talking, or I was talking with all the guests and so forth, and giving them my perspective on, because there are a lot of the people that they had there were either had never been to the 500 before or had only been once or twice. So they were still kind of wrapping their heads around, everything that they could see, for the first or second time and what it all meant and that sort of thing. And then, they had some cool people up there. We had Kelly Loeffler, the SBA chief for the administration. She was a guest up there, as was the 40th anniversary winner, Danny Sullivan, was with us for a good bit of the day. And so I got to spend a little bit of time with him, as well as the artist that had done some things for McLaren. And one of the great things about that was we had a team down on pit lane that was communicating as the race went on through all 4 cars, kind of what strategy was looking like, if say Nolan was going to go long on a stint, or if they had a vibration, or what was going to happen with Kyle. How Pato was looking, and kind of telling him to be patient, let the race come to him, sort of thing. And I was able to communicate that through our PA system to all the guests that were in the suite. And as the race went on, it was kind of funny because at first they were glued to the TV because obviously, as you know, most of the suites have TVs in there. But as sort of my live commentary was going on, you could see them paying less. When I would come on, they would look away from the TV because like, oh, what's going on now? So they
Yeah,
really made
right,
them feel
right.
like they were in the know, right? They were like plugged right into the team communication, which was awesome. And it was a great day. And for all the years I'd been coming to the Speedway, that I think that was the first time I'd ever actually been there at 4:30 in the morning. And it's this greatest feeling when you
Yeah.
see the lights from the control tower, as well as the pylon at the start finish line, and then just to see how it builds throughout the day, and the smoke rising up from the snake pit in the background, waiting for those guys to kick things off, and just the fans pouring in, and the flyover, and I mean just everything that you and I are
It's
both so,
amazing.
so attuned to.
That's why for sponsors, and it's really hard unless you can get them there. It's such an experiential kind of thing. It's not just getting you're in a box somewhere watching a ball game or up in a skybox watching a hockey game. It's so much different, particularly when you're able to take your folks down in the garage area, pits. I mean, it's such a and I've been there at dawn. So I mean I've seen that. I've got there at dark. It really is an amazing, wonderful, miraculous place. I guess I could describe it that way. How surprised were you when Scotty McLaughlin hit the wall
I, I
before the
was
start?
I was literally shocked, especially and certainly, there's been a lot made of everything that happened with the Penske team that week, and McLaughlin's car being the only one that wasn't penalized after that whole what I called on my show the attenuator gate. Uh, to see that happen, and as soon as it happened, my mind immediately flashed back to 1992. And within minutes,
Yeah.
I texted Roberto Guerrero because he's a great friend of mine, and
Oh,
I
okay.
said, "Hey Roberto, can I connect you with Scott McLaughlin so you can tell him exactly how to handle this thing?" But
Oh no.
and I wasn't the only one that was feeling,
Yeah.
1992 vibes again, even though it wasn't quite as cold as it was back then.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I went to 92 and I went to my first race, my first in person, 82. We had Kevin Cogan come across the track and take out Mario and damage Foyt's car. And I mean,
Right.
gosh, so 82, 92, and 25 were typical. But I mean, I just felt, I personally like Scott McLaughlin a lot. So I
As
felt
do I.
heartbroken for him. But as it was just confirmed by our prior guest, Tony Donahue, I wasn't the only person in that 350,000 crowd that said to themselves, "Oh, so looks like a curse on Penske for all the shenanigans."
Well,
Gosh,
it's for sure. And I was thinking, even really before the whole attenuator thing came to light, McLaughlin had that massive crash, and you could tell even then he was distraught, just as he was when he got out of the car after he
yeah,
crashed there on the pace lap. And it was like, man, I was just thinking to myself, 1992 jokes aside, thinking that, man, this is just a nightmarish
mm,
month for Penske racing,
yeah. And then
without a doubt.
all the problems that Newgarden had during the race with pit stops and stuff, and it really was bad. And Will didn't have a great race, which I love Will Power, but I didn't talk about this with Tony. I was saving it for you. We had, going into the race, I felt badly because we had this not brand new, but a new team to Indy, the Italian team Prema, and a rookie and Robert Schwartzman do a great job, win the pole, but it seemed like all the oxygen got sucked out of the room with the Penske scandal. And so I'm thinking, all right, well, this is a chance he'll be able to redeem himself. And I was pulling for him. I wanted to see him, if not win, at least top three. The polls produced more winners than any starting position anywhere else in the field over the years. And then he just had a really bad race, and then ended up crashing into the pit wall. I mean, it was just, I felt so bad for him. I felt bad for the team because they performed so well in qualification and performed so badly in the race.
And I'm really glad you brought that up, Will, because as I said on my show last week when we were doing sort of a qualifying wrap up and a sort of a precursor to the 500 coming up, I had purposely actually delayed our show last week because I knew after the whole, attenuator deal that there were going to probably be updates almost on a daily basis, and it was going to change on an almost daily basis. And when I finally came on, I said, this show should really be celebrating the amazing accomplishment of Robert Schwartzman and that entire Prema team, because anybody that follows the IndyCar series knows that team has pretty well struggled through the first part of the year in these first five races going in. I mean, think about the fire deal that he had at Thermal and all of that stuff. And all of a sudden, for all intents and purposes, come out of nowhere. This should have been the story, not have it taken away by what was going on with Penske Racing. And, the Prema team, those guys, kudos to them. And some people are like, well, this is an Italian team and they came out of nowhere. But they got a lot of really, really bright guys on that team. And I think some people don't even know that one of their main, like their driver coach, advisor to the team is a former Penske Indy 500 pole sitter, Ryan Briscoe.
Yeah.
So I'm sure that he had a big influence on Schwartzman's attempts, but at the same time, their lead R&D guy is a gentleman by the name of Robert Gouet, who's been around motorsports for a long time and happens to be married to Pippa Mann, who's been in 7 Indy 500s herself. So he's a really smart guy. And their lead team manager, de facto team manager, was only on the Indy 500 deal only. He was taking a leave of absence from his regular job. And what was his regular job? The dude works for SpaceX.
Yeah.
So they literally have a rocket scientist on the team, along with Gouet and Ryan Briscoe and everybody else that made that team, go as well as it did. What surprised me almost more than Schwartzman getting the pole, which was unbelievably cool, was that his teammate Callum Ilott was like not in the same zip code for that qualifying run, which I was really surprised at.
Everybody thought it was going to be flip-flop because he's had some decent performances in the past. Ilott has, and everybody was stunned that where was Ilott when here's Schwartzman on the pole. Pierce Phillips also. We work with Pierce on our first 516 with Sam Schmidt. He was the team leader at that point. I know a lot of the folks over at Prema just from being in and around folks over the years. It's just it's a good bunch of folks. It's just that they're really a good bunch of folks, and that's why we both felt badly that they lost some of the glamour they should have received by winning the pole. But there'll be another time for them. They'll be fun.
It's one of those where now they've had a taste of success, right? And which they, quite frankly, I don't think they were ready for. They were just. The sort of the little team that could. Obviously, they've got a great pedigree coming from Europe, but all of a sudden, they get on the pole, and suddenly, sponsors came out of the woodwork, and all of a sudden, there was all kinds of extra attention in that week leading into the race. But you could see even on carb day that the team, when they were practicing hot pit stops, it was something that they weren't familiar with. The guy had never been on an oval before,
right?
And I was even saying, I'm like, this is awesome that he's on the pole, but I think we're going to see that relative inexperience show itself within the first one or two pit stops, and lo and behold, unfortunately, that's what happened.
Yeah, it really did, and I take no pleasure in others' discomfort, so I just felt really bad for them because I wish they had performed better. But you know what? Sometimes, failure teaches you more than victory. So
that's exactly right.
They did get a taste of. Here's an interesting statistic I was unaware of until the other day. Fact of the matter is, with Alex starting in the 6th starting spot, winning the race, 6 times people from that spot have won. As I said before, the pole has produced more winners than any other starting position. But the last person to start in 6th place that won was Dan Weldon in 2011. So I mean that's a kind of a weird historic twist.
That is kind of an odd bit, but very interesting nonetheless. That's really interesting to think back. Yeah, with Dan and boy, sure wish he was still around with us.
Yeah, boy, you and so many of us. Kirkwood, biggest mover, more position gain than anybody else in the field.
Right up until the post-race technical inspection.
Yeah. Elio turned the fastest lap of the race. I was kind of pulling for Elio. I would like to see, number 5, but
I think a lot of us were. We were kind of seeing that total veteran move, right? Where he's learned from Rick Mears and he's learned from those previous 4 wins, and it was kind of like let the race come to him. But
Mhm.
the race never turned into the race that he expected,
Right.
much like I'm sure a lot of the other guys.
For a
And
lot
that's
of
why all of
folks.
a sudden, he was 12th at the end and then moved up to 10th, in the final results. But I think he's saying that he wants to stick it out for another couple years. I heard talk about him trying to drive through 27. So we'll
Yeah.
see.
Yeah.
I think now that he's a part owner of that Meyer Shank team, he's probably can pull a few strings and see if he can't get
Well, I think
himself
he's got some influence, but I mean, wouldn't want to be the only 5-time winner, right? I mean, you'd move heaven and earth to make that happen if you possibly could,
Of
right?
course
So,
you would. I mean, hell, how many of those guys, that don't achieve the level of success Elio did would do exactly that just to be in the race, let alone win one?
first time we had for a long time, first time we had a checker yellow checker finish. I don't think it mattered. I think Pole's going to win anyway. I don't think Ericsson had anything for him on that last straightaway. I think that about it. What it was, Kevin, a straightaway distance before the yellow came out.
I don't know that it was
Turn
quite that much, but it
turn
was. It
4
was.
maybe.
I mean, it was literally time-wise, it was I think just under a second.
Oh, okay,
But
okay.
I mean,
So, yeah, it wouldn't
you
matter.
saw, as did everybody else in those last almost 40 laps or so, everybody was kind of in lockstep. Aside
Yeah.
from Pelot sort of surprising Ericsson with that move to take the lead, nobody could really do a whole lot of anything, right? They couldn't really get out in clean air enough to make a run. It was like dirty air. They'd pull
Mhm.
out to try to get a little bit more clean air, and they just couldn't had, Louis Foster and DeFrancesco, trying to do everything they possibly could, hoping for the caution that didn't happen until the last lap to try to get themselves back into the tail of,
Yeah.
of the field. So, and I've talked with some people and they're like, well, these guys were basically a lap down. They should have gotten out of the way. Well, those guys it's their race too. And the rules state, if they're not a lap down,
They
they are
weren't. That's
allowed
the
to
whole thing.
race
They
for
were still in the
position.
lead lap, right?
Exactly right. So, and honestly, as the race dwindled down to those last few laps, thank God that they were there, because if Pelot would have been able to get by them, he'd have probably been gone, and then it would have been an even less interesting finish than we had.
Well, to the point was made earlier by Tony Donahue. I mean, this is exactly what happened in 21 when Sato won. Pelot was in the back and was in the two spot, and Pelot Sato had traffic in front of him. So Pelot said he learned from that and watched how Sato measured and used the traffic as a buffer to keep where he was in that position. And so Pelot just did the same thing with Ericsson. But another interesting fact with Ericsson and Pelot, I think a lot of people, I was surprised when Pelot made the move. I thought it was a little early, right? I mean, you look at what happened with last year with Pato and Newgarden, but they're saying Pato went early in lap 199, right? So the last two people that were able to lead then win after the last 10 laps were, guess who? It was Alex, and it was Ericsson. Ericsson led from 10 laps out, 13 for Pelot.
Right.
So
Tail of the
just
dragon for Ericsson.
a lot of distinctives in this race. But again, it was one of those, oh boy, kind of that race hurt a little bit. I mean, there's so many crazy things that happened. But I think the start of it with Scott McLaughlin was just heartbreaking. I mean, I almost couldn't even watch it because you could tell he had to be, like, he was so beside himself. I heard reports he was crying.
He was.
I mean, oh my gosh, it's just so horrible.
It was. I mean, there were enough heartbreaking stories, throughout the course of that race. I mean, even at the beginning, to have Marco get kind of pushed wide there into turn one, on the fourth lap and taken out, to Rossi's fire, to Ryan Hunter-Reay, and I mean all those guys that were having really good races, to those types of things. I mean, as you said, Will, it's like you don't take any joy in anybody's misfortune, and those were things and places and drivers within that race that really had an impact on the racing itself. And it's unfortunate that they weren't able to finish that out.
I don't know about you. I thought Hunter-Reay was on a good run. I thought this could be
He
number
was.
2 for him.
He was. That Ryan Reinbold team, with Cusick, I said, there's a couple of sort of under the radar teams that were looking good going into the race, but weren't really getting a ton of notoriety. And I think Ed Carpenter's team was one of them, with Rossi in particular, and Ryan Reinbold was another. You had him and Jack Harvey as teammates there, and yeah, Ryan was looking really good, and I was like, man, I would not have predicted that. I mean, I would have predicted maybe a good finish, but he was on pace. He could have won that race had he not had the problems that he had.
Chris, I was thinking, when Jack Harvey was leading for a while, I said to guys, my friend Mark, I said, what's Fox going to do if Harvey wins? Right? Somebody's going to offer him a ride, and where's his broadcasting career going to go?
Yeah, yeah, it's over before it really started. Then if that happened.
Did you hear the line David Letterman just slayed poor Jack with? I felt so bad for Jack. Jack was interviewing Letterman in the pits, and he said, do you have any tips for my broadcasting career? He says, yeah, you should keep a helmet on for a while longer.
Yeah, I did catch that one. I thought that was pretty good.
Hey, let's change the subject for a minute because I'm curious.
Sure.
I've seen on some of your posts you're in the food industry.
Yes.
How did that happen? I mean, it's a great place to be, but I mean, what's the story there?
It's quite frankly the most bizarre dichotomy of being a race car driver and in the food business at the same time. As a kid growing up back in Wisconsin, my parents and my grandfather in particular, we had a neighborhood grocery store, and he had moved here from Germany back in the early 1920s and wound up he was a master butcher by trade.
Okay.
And he brought over with him his best friend who was a master sausage maker. And so as I was a kid growing up, we were known in the community for great cuts of meat and great sausages and that sort of thing. But then that particular grandfather passed away in, I think it was 1976, and I was about 10 years old at the time. And when you're a little kid, and whether it's a grocery store business or you're a vacuum cleaner salesman, whatever, it's just what your parents did. You don't really think anything of it. You just don't necessarily have any aspirations to go do that. Well, then fast forward about almost 50 years, and in April of 2022, my oldest daughter and her boyfriend drove down from Wisconsin to come visit us here in Indianapolis. And just out of the blue, her boyfriend says, "Hey, you want to try making sausage?" And I'm like, where in the hell did this come from? I mean, I don't even think my daughter knew the whole story of Faye. Well, where do we start? And as it turns out, we had any family recipes were non-existent because that generation never wrote anything down. It was all inside their heads. So, when they passed away, the recipes kind of went with them. And I'm like, okay, great. Where do we even begin? Because now with the internet, there's a billion different recipes for a billion different things. So we decided, being of German background, that if we were going to start with something, we'd make Italian sausage. So that way, if we screwed it up, we weren't going to offend our own ethnicity. So and the smart thing to have done, Will, would have been to just make a few pounds and just go through the process and see what it's like. Well, dummy us, we go ahead and we make 15 pounds of sausage right out of the gate, not having any clue if it was any good or not. And it turns out that it was really good. And one of my best friends, and he's been a great mentor, our next door neighbor, who I think is watching right now, actually. He was sort of been our test bed and that sort of thing. And so fast forward a year ago, February, after having sampled all kinds of different stuff and moved on from just the sweet Italian sausage, which was part of that story that I just told, we launched the business in earnest, because we said, well, it's time to poop or get off the pot kind of thing after all we've, kind of put into it. And so now that neighbor of ours, he's a GM of a couple of restaurants on the campus of Miami of Ohio. And we supply their restaurants with some of our bulk sausage on a monthly basis. And we've now expanded to, I think, 19 or 20 menu items. We've actually got a couple more in development right now. We've got a great cold pack partner. So we ship coast to coast within the continental US. And, we've kind of revamped our old family logo from our grocery store days to modernize it. And, we're like, at the end of the day, it wasn't, I wasn't looking to go, be a sausage maker, so to speak. But at the same time, everything that I do from a driving standpoint, it's on a contract basis. It's not full time for any one of the manufacturers or anything like that. So it's like, there's some gaps in my schedule. So it's like, well, let's diversify a little bit more. Let's do something like that. And we've been met with great feedback. Everybody seems to love what we've put out, and I feel really good about the fact that I think we're we're doing my grandfather and my family do justice by making sure that we're putting out the best sausages that there are, and we've got some jerky and some other stuff and that sort of thing. So it's been a fun little journey, and we're working on some other cool things with that.
I'm going to start bombarding Indianapolis, the track, with requests for sausage and pepper grinders up in the Holman Terrace Club, and see if we can get your sausage brought into.
I was going to say we'll have to
the official sausage of the Indianapolis Motor Speedway.
That's what I've been talking about, and it's funny you say that because I was joking with my wife. We were sitting there on Carb Day watching the Wiener 500 or the Weenie 500. And I haven't done it yet, but I think I'm going to put up on the social media pages for our sausage business. I said somebody's feeling the pressure from Kraus Meats to perform and up their game. So no, but we're having fun with it, and people seem to love it. So that's
good. Real quick, tell us about your show. How can people get your show? Where are you? What's the best way for folks to catch Seventh Gear Over Rev?
Well, I appreciate you asking. Will, we have been in existence now since 2020.
Wow.
It was kind of born out of the COVID time. And with my racing background, having been a professional racer and still active in the industry, there's, as you well know, and you have a lot of people that you've met over the years, I was like, well, let's use this to our advantage. So we've been able to fortunately grow to, I think we've got over 8,500 downloads now all time, and we're heard in 61 different countries. And we took a little bit of a hiatus towards the end of last year because we wanted to really make the move to YouTube and make more use of that instead of just audio only, which it had been. So I'm fortunate now that I have a producer that helps us kind of cut the things together. So now we've got our own YouTube channel. In fact, we had last week we aired a fantastic interview that I'd invite all of your listeners to watch with Al Unser Jr. and our friend Mike Lashmet down at the Vintage Indy Shops. We got to, and that's honestly with our show, that's with the racing background that I have, I felt like whenever we talk to people, whether it's Al Jr., we've had, Roberto Guerrero on, we've had Paul Page on, we've had a number of different folks, but it's like, oftentimes when people watch things like this, they get the typical network answer like you would see on the Fox broadcast. It's like, well, what's it like to do 200 miles an hour? Well, I like to dig for the stories that, we jokingly say you can only write about, whether it was, a hated rival or a particularly odd thing that nobody really ever knew about. So we're making more of an effort on that. We're trying to do weekly content, whether it's either the YouTube channel, and then we can strip the audio from that and put it on our regular platforms. But we're excited about that. That was our first foray. Next week we've actually got an in-person interview. We did the same day that we did the Al Unser Jr. interview. We also interviewed Tino Belli, who's the IndyCar's head of aerodynamic development, and we talk about his influence on the development of the new car that you and Tony were just talking about on the last segment. So that'll be very interesting. We've got some other great guests coming up. We've got Steve Zautke, which I'm sure you know, the historian and an author there. We've got Ari Lyondike coming on. We've got Trans Am champion Jack Baldwin coming on, a good friend of mine. So we've had Willie T on before. We're going to try to have him on again. Danny Sullivan and I talked about having him back on when I saw him up in the suite on race day. So we're just trying to have the fun with it and kind of tell the stories that nobody ever really gets to hear from a driver's perspective.
Sure. Well, let's have a subscriber all in here. So all of our everybody that watches or listens to the Pits Are Open, I want you to subscribe or follow Seventh Gear Over Rev, and I want to invite the Seventh Gear Over Rev people to subscribe and follow the Pits Are Open.
100%. Like I said, we can help each other out here, my friend.
Well, I'm so glad to have you on, and I know we haven't connected in a while, but I follow you. I follow your stuff, and so I keep an eye on what's going on. And,
I appreciate that very much, Will. Thank you.
Thanks,
Kevin.
for having
me on.
Good to have you. Good to
Thank
have
you so much.
Well, hopefully we'll bump into you at a track somewhere here, not too distant future. So thanks.
Maybe again. You know what we'll have to do, Will, is we'll have to do one of these where I host and I get to ask you questions, and then we'll really double down on that.
That'll be awesome. All right, Kevin Kraus, everybody. Thanks, Kevin. Have a great day. Thank you.
Thanks, Will. You too. Thanks for having me.
All right, folks, that's it. We're out of time. And again, whatever platform you're on, please like. I'm serious. This is so important to us. Do it right now. Like, comment. It takes nothing to like it. Just hit the like button, the thumbs up button on YouTube. Like, comment, share. And again, we started the new YouTube channel, and we really need you to go over to that one. If you're on the old YouTube channel, the new YouTube channel handle is the Pits Are Open Podcast. We just need you to go over there and subscribe. And if you're on Facebook, and a lot of you watch us on Facebook, we really want to encourage you to move over to YouTube, the Pits Are Open podcast. Pits Are Open on Spotify. Follow us there. Alex, thank you. Great show today. We worked through the technical glitches early. It's like racing. You have technical problems. You got to work through them. We did. So thanks to Tony Donahue. Thanks to Kevin Kraus. And we'll be back next week. And be a great show. Tell your friends about it, your relatives, associates, neighbors. Pits are open. Now the pits are closing. See you. Bye.
It's taking so long.